Good morning, folks. Thank you for coming and listening to us on the webinar today. I would really love to talk to you about why Microsoft and Red Hat have partnered together on this container Kubernetes offering. I'll give you a bit of history on how we are collaborating, where we started from, and how we are developing and supporting customers together. And my other colleagues will walk you through the detailed solution capabilities as well. So first and foremost that we look at is 95% of the Fortune 500 companies trust their business to run on the Microsoft cloud. Okay, and as you can see, most of these customers are also Red Hat customers. And in fact, 100% of Fortune 500 companies in these industries rely on Red Hat. So sectors like airlines, telecommunications, healthcare, banking primarily. A lot of these customers are OpenShift customers, and a lot of these also use RHEL. So customers came to Microsoft and Red Hat as in, we want to be using both. Can you look at how we can help make lives easier for us? So that's basically was a key indication for us to start working together and collaborating together. So Microsoft and Red Hat have been partnering together for more than 5 years, close to 5 years. We started our journey way back in November 2015. We started simply with supporting RHEL on Azure and treating it with first-class support, and the strength of this partnership has been built on the piece of work. More than 50% of Azure workload runs on Linux. But as you can see, the partnership and the relationship has grown quite a bit now. So other than RHEL on IaaS, which was our first joint effort, then we saw around 2015, the entire container platform starting to get acceptance from the industry. So we decided to look at making OpenShift together. So at Red Hat Summit about 2 years back is where we announced the general availability of Azure Red Hat OpenShift, the first party fully managed Red Hat OpenShift service in the public cloud at that point in time. Now it also helps that at Microsoft, we have a lot of folks who does and contribute to upstream Kubernetes. So anything that we do that helps upstream Kubernetes helps OpenShift as well. And that in general helps both companies. Now we also ventured into a few other areas being SQL Server on RHEL and even Windows containers. So we have SQL operator as well available now. And we have customers in production running SQL on RHEL, in production, on-premise, as well as Azure. Also, another key aspect that we're starting to drive and we're seeing a lot of acceptance from the industry is specifically around SAP running on RHEL on Azure, because that's a very close partnership that we have specifically in terms of the hybrid support that RHEL has on Azure. So that's the key aspect of it. Now, from an OpenShift perspective, we have two engineering teams working together every day, having Scrum meetings and conversations on Slack channel. By building this service, we are finding and fixing bugs that will benefit everyone using OpenShift on Azure, not just the service. So what we hear from our customers around the world is that their ability to create value for their end customers, now both internal as well as external, depends upon your ability to deliver applications faster. Now, it's really your ability to be great at application development and app delivery, which will help you differentiate your business, engage your customers, and find new ways to create value, and that could turn into possible revenue opportunities for you. And containers and Kubernetes fundamentally enable DevOps, microservices, and cloud-native application development. And we would like to think that OpenShift on Azure is the best platform for you to deliver applications across the hybrid cloud. So a lot of people have gone into the containers adoption mode. They've realized the complexity that comes in. So they said, okay, let's get and look at adopting an orchestrator like Kubernetes, which will help us manage the containers on their own. But having said that, even though enterprise are ready to adopt it, they're saying Kubernetes is not an easy job. In fact, 75% of the enterprise users will say that's the complexity of Kubernetes, which is a blocker for us to adopt containers. So that's the biggest problem. Now, why is that happening? Because if you look at it, installing and getting Kubernetes up and running is not a few hours of job. It can take up to a couple of hours because it requires a lot of aspects. You need to look at the install aspect of it in terms of how do you set up the OS, how do you look at validating whether it's according to the policies and the guidelines that you have. Then you need to look at, okay, if I need to do this again and again, look at templating it. Then you go across, okay, deployment, where you look at, your identity, security access, your role-based access control, then setting up your ingress, and how do you get all the firewalls in place? How do you look at your build and deployment methodology? Then you look at the harden and operate space as well, which itself is a lot of activities that a team has to do. And if the entire team has to do it day in, day out, it's not a trivial job at all. So Red Hat has done a real great job by making OpenShift, because they've really taken care of the install, deploy, and hardening part. And where Microsoft comes in with Azure Red Hat OpenShift is primarily around the operate part. So let's look at what exactly is what I'm talking about in detail. So containers, as I said, comes with their own challenges in terms of, okay, how do you look at container security, whether I'm meeting the compliance that my industry is set up, whether my company is set it up, how am I looking at scanning my images, whether the images are secure, am I updating and patching it at the right time. The other aspect, other than getting the applications up and running on containers, is how do I look at data management, because that's the most critical part that comes in. So how do you look at that aspect of it? So, and third but not the least is your application delivery. If I have my application running, how do I have the capabilities out of the box, or do I need to integrate other tools to help me monitor it, manage my applications? How do I monitor? So all those things is something that Red Hat really makes it easy, because it's got a trusted version of Kubernetes that it supports. It basically, what it does is it makes time free. It gives a lot of capabilities which otherwise you would have to do it yourself or get in third-party tools to do it. And that's where it frees up a lot of time for your IT ops team and your developers to really work on the value that they're supposed to provide, that is writing your business applications. So OpenShift on containers platform basically is, the way I look at it is, if you go and ask customers running Kubernetes and then running OpenShift container platform, not everybody will really like, in terms of saying, okay, it's got a lot of things which are reduced, but I still have to do a lot of tasks. So you've got to look at, in a traditional environment, you need to look at deploying and managing a lot of supporting infrastructure. So you end up managing a lot of things yourself, right from the time you create a cluster, your network configuration, your monitoring and logging, right down to securing, patching, and updating the cluster. Now, all this takes time and effort. So if you look at it, your cluster architecture itself is, you've got a lot of nodes, you have a set of master nodes, your infra nodes, and your worker nodes, and that requires a lot of effort. So what we do primarily in Azure Red Hat OpenShift is, we take all the complexity away from you and we manage it. So right from the time you get OpenShift up and running on Azure, that is Azure Red Hat OpenShift, we manage your clusters, we take care of the security aspect of it. Okay, so you don't need to worry about setting up your monitoring, your logging, your network configuration, and even from a support perspective is where we are there to support you. Whereby what we ensure is you have time to do what is meant for you, that is your core business, that is your core business logic that you write in the form of applications. So I'll just move to the next slide, trying to summarize what this overall offering is. If I were to summarize it, this is the only offering in the industry which is jointly engineered, operated, and supported by both Microsoft and Red Hat. And it's built for enterprise with security and compliance as the topmost priority. Not everyone wants to manage their own databases, so we enable developers to easily integrate to Azure data services like MySQL, Postgres, and Cosmos DB. So you can go into the portal, Azure portal, create a Mongo or a Cosmos or SQL instance, and kind of have best of both worlds. Although this is a fully managed service, we do understand that you want to scale on demand, because that's what customers today want. They want to pay as you go. So that's where we've added the capability as well for you to allow you to scale on your own terms. And that's where basically, if you look at it, if you were to create a cluster on Azure Red Hat OpenShift, you would be able to spin up a cluster in less than 12-13 minutes. The key aspects that a lot of customers have asked us right from the time that we've gone GA on this service is, how do you look at support? Do I need to work on, how many people do I need to approach? So key thing that we say is, because this is a jointly engineered, operated, and supported platform, there is no back and forth on, oh, it's an Azure platform or it's an OpenShift platform. It's our problem together and we solve it together. And best is we have a unified support operations. So the customer sees just one interface to this. So they log a ticket through the Azure customer support portal. But in the back end, we have Microsoft and Red Hat engineers that are sharing the same ticket data in our integrated case management system. A lot of Red Hat engineers now have what we call business guest accounts and SAW, or rather secure access workstation devices. And these SAW devices are secure. These are the exact workstations that our Azure engineers have, and this allows us to jointly support the customer, but still keeping all our certifications from a compliance perspective in place. So we can wake up our Red Hat engineers and Red Hat can wake us up, and it's a very nice way to manage a service like this. This is very important to the kind of customers that both Microsoft and Red Hat have. And that kind of talks and it kind of shows how we integrate support in the backend. So we have stuff like daily Scrum, as I mentioned before, and we don't treat this like a regular partner. It's a best of breed service which is offered jointly by both the partners. So these are a few capabilities that have come into OpenShift 4.3, and my colleagues and my friends from Biqmind and Red Hat will cover these in detail as we go through this webinar. But the key aspect that I really want to talk to you from an Azure and an OpenShift perspective is, if you have an existing contract or an existing enterprise agreement with Azure with Microsoft on Azure, you can use your monetary commitments as part of that contract to use Azure Red Hat OpenShift. So just to summarize this in terms of the core benefits of what you get when you look at deploying Azure Red Hat OpenShift. The first thing is pay as you go. So you don't need to get into a 12-month upfront commitment. If you decide that you want to have X amount of nodes, you spin it up. If you don't require it at the end of the day, you can spin it off. So you go spin up your cluster and spin it down. You can do it on a daily basis, and because it doesn't take more than 10 to 12 minutes to spin up a cluster and tear down a cluster, you can do it, and you pay Microsoft on an hourly basis. Same is the case that it applies to both the master nodes as well as the application nodes. Also, if you look at saying, okay, I have a fixed set of nodes which I know I'm going to run for the next 12 months, you can get up to 40% of discounts by reserving what we call as reserved instances. So you can say that I will need a 3-node cluster for the next 12 months. So you end up getting close to a 40% discount on the overall cost of Arrow across. And that's where basically it makes life easier, because you have identified what your workload is going to be for the next month. So I have customers which will have a combination of reserved instances and pay as you go depending upon your needs. Okay, also we have a wide variety of VMs which are available to meet your different business needs. So if you're looking at normal applications, or you're looking at machine learning or deep learning, so we have different kinds of CPUs which are available for you. I spoke about the integrated support and operations that both Microsoft and Red Hat offer. So, and we have an SLA, a guaranteed SLA of 99.9%. So coming to my last slide before I hand it over to my colleague, is from an availability perspective, Azure Red Hat OpenShift has 2 versions that we are supporting. So the latest version is 4.3, and that is available in 4 regions across Asia, so which is primarily Japan East, Japan West, Singapore, that is Southeast Asia, and Australia East. There are 4 other regions where Arrow 3.11 is already available, but Arrow 4.3 is going to be there by end of this month or early next month. Okay, so feel free to go to the Azure, so go to portal.azure.com and try it out as part of your evaluation exercise. With this, I would like to hand it over to my colleague from Red Hat, Edwin, to walk you through the capabilities of Azure Red Hat OpenShift and what it offers specifically also from a developer perspective. Over to you, Edwin.